So I'm delighted to be joined by David Suzuki and Courtney Howard. I suspect that neither one of them need a lot of introductions, but just in case, David Suzuki is a father and a grandfather, and he's an award-winning geneticist and broadcaster. He co-founded the David Suzuki Foundation, and in 1975, he helped launch and host the long-running CBC Radio's Quirks and Quarks. And in 1979, he became familiar to audiences around the world as the host of CBC TV's Nature of Things, which still airs today. He has 29 honorary degrees, and he's written and co-written over 50 books, 20 of them for children. So David, I'm curious from your perspective, what does October 1st mean, and why is this important? Why is this group important, and why is this moment important from your perspective?
Let me begin by saying that I'm speaking to you from the traditional unceded territory of the Tlayaquat Nation, home of the New Channels people. They have cared for the lands and waters in this beautiful area of Vancouver Island for thousands of years. And I'm especially pleased right now because it was here in Tofino in 1989 that I received my first Indigenous name from one of the great elders of the New Channels people, Simon Lucas. And the name he gave me was Nuchi, which means mountain. I speak to you today as an elder, and I speak solely on behalf of my grandchildren who are free of, and I am free of any obligations to any organization, any company or political party. I'm free of the need for money, for fame, for power, or even sex. So this means that as an elder, I can speak the truth. These days, governments act as if elders are a problem. You know, we become a drain on medical services, and we no longer contribute to the economy. So they got to get more and more younger people and immigrants to come here to keep that economy growing, because we're taking up so much of what that economy is serving. But I believe that rather than being marginalized the way we are and a nuisance, elders are the most important group in society today. Why? Because we've lived an entire life. Yeah, we're a pain for people like Courtney who are in the business of helping you to keep us alive, but we've already lived a complete life. We've had our ups and downs. We've had our struggles. We've had a few successes. We've witnessed changes in our surroundings. We've listened to the words and the actions of politicians and government officials. We've learned a hell of a lot. And now I believe our job is to sift through those life lessons. They've been hard won. And now we should sift through and say, what the hell have we learned? What can we tell the generations yet to come? What matters most in our lives? And I can tell you from the experience of caring for my father in the last month of his life, he never, ever talked about stuff, money, big house that he once owned in London, Ontario, the new car that he loved so much. The only thing my father talked about, and I believe those are the things that mattered, were family, friends, and the things that we did together. And to my father, that was his richness. He kept saying, David, I die a rich man. My wife and I had been supporting my parents financially ever since he retired. His wealth was those things that he did with people, family and friends. And in those, he did die a wealthy man. Elders, I believe, are a living record for society, a witness to the enormous changes that have happened in the world around. As a biologist, I look at people as biological beings. And You know, the amazing thing about us is we exhibit unbelievable diversity, not just biological diversity, though we exhibit the diversity of gender, of ethnicity, of language, of culture, of religion, of socioeconomic position. And they're all interesting things. We love to travel to experience the differences, but the differences now define us, define who we are and what we want. But we face enormous problems now as a result of those differences, from Gaza and Ukraine to the homeless and the poor. Our differences lock us into positions that ignore the most important reality. We all belong to one species. We're one species. And that fact determines our most fundamental needs, the needs of everybody in the world. We need to exist, to be healthy and to be well taken care of. We need clean air. We need pure water. We need rich food and soil. We need the energy that comes from the sun through photosynthesis. And the amazing thing to me as a biologist, these fundamental needs of all human beings are cleansed, regenerated, provided by the web of living things, the plants and animals. So earth, air, fire, and water, those are our most fundamental needs. And life itself provides those and renews those year after year. And not only is that, to me, an amazing thing, but most of the genes in humans are the same as the genes in every animal, every plant, every microorganism, because we share a common evolutionary history. And that means that all of life is our kin. And surely we treat relatives differently from if they were just resources. We treat them with love and respect. Surely then we must all work together on to protect the most fundamental needs of all of our brother and sister human beings, as well as all of the other species that contribute to our well-being. The problem is that for most of human existence, we knew, and at this meeting I'm at here in Tofino, a new channel land guardian, he said it all. He said, we live in a web of relationships, relationships with all other animal and plant species, with air, water, soil, and sunlight. That is what we achieve by living in that web of relationships. And as one strand in a web, everything is interconnected. And therefore, as we receive the benefits of that web, we have a huge responsibility. And in most of what we do today, that reciprocity is missing. Now, this is not a criticism I make of you, Courtney, but it struck me when you said that the doctors had to be taught about how our health is related to the health of the planet. And I go, wait a minute now. What the hell? You mean a doctor who's concerned with our health doesn't understand that the air we breathe determines whether we live or not, and what we do to air then is going to determine how well we are. If you use the air as a garbage can, what the hell do you expect from humans? So, Courtney, I would strongly suggest that what you and people like Melissa Lamb of CAPE, who are so wonderful in getting the message out, is, for heaven's sakes, medicine, the practice of human health, must be shown. Everybody in medical school must know from the beginning that the state of the biosphere is a direct measure of the state of human being and human health. We, as long as you live in a web of relationships, you understand there is a reciprocity. We gain the benefits from that web, but we have a responsibility to, as Indigenous people tell me, act in a good way to ensure that the web remains intact so that it can continue to be as generous and abundant as it has in the past. The challenge I see that we face at this moment is that the systems that we've constructed to guide, to shape, and to constrain our behavior and our activity are built on a different understanding rather than being founded on the idea of a web where we have responsibilities. We now believe that we exist in a pyramid. And in a pyramid, we're at the top and everything down below is for us. And we environmentalists run around then saying, oh, we've got to be more responsible. We've got to maintain the pyramid. But the pyramid of our laws, of our economy, of our politics, those things that we've developed to guide and constrain us are, in fact, the driving force of our destructiveness. So in trying, we've been arguing for years about the development of the tar sands. No, we mustn't develop the tar sands. No, we mustn't develop the infrastructure to deliver frack gas. But in all of our conversations, the economists and the corporate leaders come to us and they negotiate then and say, oh, what about jobs? And what about the economy? What about taxes? And all that stuff. And we, what do we have? We have a very prominent potential president of the United States, who was already a past president, who's basically a climate denier. We had 10 years in Canada of a Stephen Harper government in which he said, no, we can't do anything about reducing emissions. That's crazy economics. So he elevated the economy above the atmosphere, the source of the air that we breathe, that creates weather, climate, and the seasons. No, the economy is more important. Not only is Donald Trump has a very good chance at being reelected, but we have a man who's going to come and be another Stephen Harper. Poilievre is at that point now where it looks like he's got a very good chance of being our next prime minister. The past prime minister we thought was a salvation from the Stephen Harper years. He said Canada's back in 2015 when he went to Paris and he invested in the tar sands. And we started with $5.5 billion for the Trans Mountain Pipeline, which is now over $34 billion and still climbing, because he said we needed to increase the revenue by exporting more tar sands oil for the taxes to pay for the things that we have to do to reduce emissions. Now, what the hell is going on? This is nuts. But it makes sense, apparently, when you have the economy as being the driving force of what we do. Our laws are all rigged against nature because we're the ones that can define rights. We have recently patted ourselves on the back because Canada has recognized the rights of a river, the Magpie River in Quebec. Oh, isn't that? But who the hell do we think we are? That we're so authoritative, we're going to assign rights to everything. 99.99% of all species alive today have been here far longer than human beings. We are an infant species. We've been around for 200,000 years. And yet we think we can assign the rights. I think every species has the right to exist because it is here. It exists, from the whales to the rabbits to the mosquitoes. They have a right as much as we do to exist on this planet. Cut down on your consumption. That's where you can all have a big effect. And that means try to cut your own energy use by 50% in a year, and then get involved politically. And that's not just signing letters or anything. I mean, writing letters, calling, going on action events. We've got to be actively involved. That's why I'm looking forward to October 1st. And it's been exhilarating to see what Nick and Raleigh have been involved with SCAN, this that is spread across the country.
Thank you very much. David, from your perspective, what would be one or two things that you would encourage seniors to think about after the moment of October 1st that we could be doing in our communities?
The most common question I'm asked, of course, is what can I do? Because there's a sense of helplessness and people will say, well, it's too late. There's nothing I can do. And when you give up, then this is exactly what the fossil fuel industry wants. They want us to feel there's nothing we can do because they're selling the line that we're always going to need fossil fuels. I think, we should name what that is. It's evil. They have known since 1959. We know that the industry has known that burning their product over time by the year 2000, if it continued to climb the way it has, that we would be in deep trouble. But in the name of profit, of course, they've continued to spend billions of dollars while taking billions in our subsidies. They've spent tens of billions of dollars to say, no, it's not real. And it's worked. One of the ways it's worked is that they denigrate scientists themselves by undermining the credibility of scientists. And now with social media, they can say through all kinds of avenues, misinformation, disinformation. And if scientists are not held up, we've just heard about the planetary boundaries. This is Johann Rockström's work that is just so critical that there are 9 boundaries, the carbon cycle, the nitrogen cycle, the pH of the oceans. These are boundaries, if we exceed those boundaries, the prospect for us, for life becomes pretty grim. Now, let me back up and say, the planet's not in trouble. We're not saving the earth. We're not that powerful. The planet will go on doing what it's always done. It changes its properties, and we're so big now we can actually change some of the physical, chemical, and biological properties. But the planet's fine. The planet will go chugging along. What is not fine is the biosphere for us, and we continue to degrade it. Anyway, the warnings have been there for decades and decades from the leading scientists, and now we're at a point where it's no longer incremental change is not going to do it. A new law here, a new park there, a tax incentive or a tax disincentive, which is what politicians will try to do. It's not going to work. The crisis is too great. And putting your money into SMRs, small nuclear reactors, geoengineering and all of that, that's just pushing it off, to say, oh, we're so smart, we're going to come up with solutions. Then is it too late? Well, it's pretty late. But the fact is that you have to keep doing the best you can. And to individuals, I say there are 2 things I think should be a priority. One is we are each a drop in the bucket. But if you have enough drops, you can fill pretty well any bucket you want. So we as individuals, we want to be part of a movement where, one, we're reducing our impact. Now, fossil fuels have become a part of everything that we use, whether it's the food, whether it's our clothing, whether it's our vehicles, whatever, the television sets, computers, everything needs energy. And most of it comes from fossil fuels to make it and run it. So reduce our consumption. We are 70% of the economy now is consumption. How much of that is stuff that we need? There's a great group in England called LEAP that says if you want to have an impact on, as one person, this is what you do. And they list under clothing, and I couldn't believe it. They say buy 3 new articles of clothing a year. That's a challenge. I've got enough clothes in my closet to last me until I kick on. Now I'm going to die a lot sooner than most of you, but that's one of them. And but the big one is travel. And they say, if you want to go on a short haul flight between Calgary and Vancouver, or Toronto and Ottawa, or Montreal, 1 flight every 3 years. If you want to go on a long haul flight from Vancouver to Toronto, or from Toronto to Paris, once every 7 years. So flying for someone like me, who's a carbon sinner big time as a documentary filmmaker, I've got such a carbon footprint from the past This is a real challenge. I have to admit that I've said I'm not going to fly jets anymore for the nature of things, but I've resigned. That was 5 years ago. Zoom has been a huge contribution to this, but I have flown twice now in the last 5 years by jet. But compared to my previous record, that's quite a bit.
If we have a couple minutes for a couple questions, this would be the time.
Well, Richard Swift, and David, you touched on this, asked, don't we need to embrace degrowth if we're going to survive as a species?
Absolutely. The economy has just become far too big to be in any way sustainable. I'm going to be talking with Mark Carney next month in Toronto about this. That it's the economic system that is built on this crazy idea that growth is essential for the health of the economy. You can't keep doing that. It's way too big already, and it's too unequally distributed. You know, why is it that any human being can be worth $1 billion, for God's sakes? You know, this should be outlawed. And now they say Musk is headed to be the first trillionaire. I don't think we have any concept of what $1 billion is, let alone $1 trillion. And yet we let the economy not only drive political priorities, but we let the people who are ultra rich who to dictate so many. You know, I'm at a meeting here in Tofino, and this is a gathering of a group I'd never heard of before. These are philanthropists who've given away over $4 billion, and you know, that's a massive amount of money. But they're trying to urge their fellow billionaires to contribute more. The reason I'm here is they're beginning to say, "Oh, do you think maybe we should support Indigenous people?" Anyway, my question is, why is any person or group allowed to be that wealthy? And the drive for more